The House is expected to vote on a plan to avoid a government shutdown today. House Speaker Mike Johnson is pushing a two-step plan, which would extend some funding until January 19th and the rest until February 2nd. Multiple Republicans have come out against it, so the Speaker needs Democratic votes to get his plan approved. CBS News' Ed O'Keefe, senior White House and political correspondent, is joining us now. Ed, so good to see you. So how is Speaker Johnson going to go about this two-step plan and get it over that finish line?
Well, first he's got to put up the votes, and we're waiting to see exactly how many different Democrats might be willing to join with Republicans, many of whom, at least, I think at this point, 4 dozen, may ultimately not vote in support of this plan. So you are going to need some Democrats. And the reason why that seems possible is for this simple reason. He's not cutting or adding any more money to what's currently being spent by the federal government. He's merely extending current levels of money spent into early next year in 2 phases. The 2-phase thing is what's new here and what's caused some concern among those that track federal spending and operations most closely, because there's a concern that there might be elements of the federal government that can work at one time and then can't work at the other, but then the other that's open might not be able to because the other one's closed. And so they're just trying to sort through all that and make sure that on a practical level the government could function. But it also would give Congress more time into February to try to get not only full funding for the rest of the fiscal year that now runs, of course, to the end of next September, but then conceivably, could you get settlement on how much money the United States is giving to Israel, to Ukraine, to Taiwan, and to deal with what Republicans have said is an urgent priority that needs to be addressed in order to get all that other money, and that is, of course, elements of border security and immigration policy.
You certainly listed there some of the top Biden administration priorities there with funding of the Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. So what is the Biden administration saying about his proposal?
This reporter himself asked the president 3 times earlier today, would you sign the speaker's spending plan? And 3 times the president ignored the question, which for those of us who follow the president closely means he heard it and he's not ready to answer it, which would suggest that they're still waiting among Democrats to see exactly how many of them might need to, want to support it, and then whether there will be enough support over in the Senate. We'll find out later this afternoon. The vote in the House is scheduled for the 4 p.m. Eastern hour. If it gets through there with comfortable bipartisan margins, then it would be hard for the Senate to say no, given, again, that it didn't raise federal spending, it didn't lower federal spending, and it didn't add anything funny or unrelated to the measure to justify not voting for it. So all of it to be seen. But the fact that the White House hasn't come out by now, Lilia, and said explicitly, since this has been out since Saturday, that the president's opposed to it, is a signal that he understands if Congress wants this done and wants to go home for Thanksgiving and come back and fight this another day, and the chance of getting all that money for those foreign operations is still there, then it's something he'd be all right with.
So let's get into some other unrelated themes. Speaker Johnson has endorsed former President Donald Trump for president. Talk to us about the relationship between the two of them.
Not as tight as it was, say, between the former Speaker, Kevin McCarthy,
Right,
and the former president. Not as tight as it might be even with other rank-and-file House Republicans who know the former president well. There is some reporting out this morning in the New York Times that shows that before he was a congressional candidate and when Donald Trump was merely a candidate on the climb in the 2016 GOP primary, Johnson was quite critical of then candidate Trump and his behavior and his comments and concerns about his temperament. So were most Republicans, however. That the Speaker came out this morning in friendly television territory and endorsed the former president, formally for re-election or to another term is perhaps not surprising and probably done to assuage the concerns of the Trump world that the Speaker's on board. In the weeks since he was chosen, they've been in touch. And of course, he is among the hundreds of House Republicans who've endorsed former President Trump. We'll see now over the next year or so whether they get a chance to meet again in person, catch up at all, and begin coordinating their messages on what exactly Republicans would do going forward.
All right. Well, Ed O'Keefe, always good to have you. Thank you.